That statue in the museum is watching you. Its stone eyes seem to track your every step, a phenomenon known as the omnidirectional gaze. This is not an illusion, but the result of a forgotten art. We are about to uncover how ancient sculptors used the power of sound to make solid stone appear alive. By the end, you will understand the 10 acoustic principles that allowed civilizations from Egypt to Mesoamerica to achieve this impossible feat. How did chanting soften granite? Could vibrations guide a sculptor's chisel? The answers lie in the lost relationship between sound and stone. What does it mean for an object to truly come to life? You walk through the hushed halls of a museum, and the stone eyes of an ancient king follow you. This experience is universal, reported by visitors from Cairo to Mexico City. It is a phenomenon experts call the omnidirectional gaze, and it is absolutely intentional. Dr. Elena Vance, a researcher specializing in ancient perceptual art, explains that these statues were not carved with simple, symmetrical faces. Instead, their features were engineered with precise, subtle geometry. The curvature of the eyeballs is not a perfect sphere, and the pupils are not simple dots. They are shallow dishes polished to a specific angle, designed to catch and reflect light from almost any direction. This creates a luminous highlight that seems to shift with you, giving the stone a living, watching presence. These artisans were masters of visual psychology, centuries before the term was even invented. They knew how to trick the human brain into seeing consciousness where there was only rock. But this mastery presents a profound mystery. How could artists working with rudimentary tools achieve such flawless, repeatable precision across continents? The answer may not lie in what they saw, but in what they heard. That shattering glass reveals a hidden power. When a singer hits the exact right note, the sound waves transfer their energy directly into the crystal, making it vibrate until it breaks. This is resonance, the first principle our ancient sculptors mastered. They understood that every material has a natural frequency, a specific pitch at which it vibrates most powerfully. For stone, this is a low, deep hum, a vibration you can feel in your bones. Historical texts from India speak of rituals where specific chants were used to soften granite, making the rock more malleable to the carver's tools. This was not magic, it was applied physics. By filling a stone block with resonant sound, perhaps from a chorus of deep-throated chanting or the steady beat of a large drum, the sculptors could create a standing wave within the material. This internal vibration would subtly reduce the friction between mineral grains, allowing chisels to bite in with less effort and greater control. But the use of sound went far beyond making the work easier. Before a single cut was made, a master sculptor would strike the raw block with a special hammer. He was not testing its strength, he was listening to its song. A clear, pure tone ringing through the stone indicated a block of uniform density, free of hidden cracks or impurities. A dull thud or a cracked, dissonant sound revealed a fatal flaw. This was their quality control, an acoustic test that ensured only the most perfect stone was chosen for a statue destined to hold a watching spirit. Without this resonant foundation, the lifelike gaze we marvel at today would have been impossible to achieve. The sculptor's hammer was also a kind of tuning fork. After selecting the perfect block, the next challenge was to make the stone itself an ally in the carving process. This brings us to the second principle, harmonic frequencies and material response. Every substance in the world, from a glass window to a granite cliff, has a unique natural frequency, a specific note it most wants to sing. Ancient artisans learned to listen for this song and then to sing along with it. They may have used precisely tuned metal rods or the controlled harmonics of their own voices to find the exact resonant pitch of the stone they were working. Think of a skilled singer shattering a crystal glass, but instead of breaking the stone, they were gently encouraging it to become more cooperative. The type of stone dictated the sound required. Limestone, being softer and more porous, would have responded to a different set of frequencies than the hard, dense crystals within granite. Modern acoustic archaeologists have recreated these conditions, demonstrating that applying the correct sonic energy creates minute, almost imperceptible vibrations within the rock. These vibrations do not melt the stone, but they can temporarily reduce the internal friction between its microscopic grains. For the sculptor, this would have felt like the difference between forcing a chisel through cold, stubborn rock and guiding it through a material that was more yielding. The stone was not softening like clay, but it was becoming less resistant, allowing for the carving of incredibly fine details like the delicate curve of an eyelid or the subtle lines around a mouth. The very rock seemed to be responding to the sculptor's will, guided by an invisible partnership between sound and stone. The deep, rhythmic chanting of monks fills the air, a sound that seems to vibrate through the floor itself. This was the soundscape of creation in many ancient workshops, where human voice was as essential a tool as any hammer or chisel. In Tibet, the creation of intricate sand mandalas is always accompanied by specific, resonant chants. The monks believed these sacred sounds infuse the geometric art with spiritual energy, charging it with purpose. This was not an isolated practice. Across the world, in the sun-baked temples of ancient Egypt, priests recited powerful hymns and mantras while master sculptors carved the statues of gods and pharaohs. They believed these spoken vibrations could call a divine presence into the stone, animating it from within. But what if this spiritual practice had a profound physical effect as well? Modern science suggests that these repetitive chants, delivered at carefully maintained low frequencies, could have done more than just invite a spirit. The sustained sonic energy may have actually altered the stone on a microscopic level. Think of how a constant, repetitive stress can fatigue metal, making it more pliable. In a similar way, the relentless, resonant chanting could have reduced the stone's inherent brittleness, a phenomenon known as acoustic softening. This would have been a practical miracle for the sculptor. A block of granite, normally prone to chipping and cracking under fine detail work, could be coaxed into accepting the most delicate carvings. The subtle lines of a smile, the intricate patterns of a headdress, the lifelike texture of skin, all became possible because the stone was being held in a state of sonic cooperation. The chanting was a brilliant fusion of spirituality and physics, a tool that served both the artist's hand and the priest's prayer, blurring the line between crafting an object and summoning a soul. These ancient workshops were not silent but filled with a strange and purposeful music. The sculptor's most important tools were not just for striking but for singing. Among them were lithophones, carefully shaped stone plates that rang with clear, pure notes when tapped with a softer mallet. Think of them as the ancient world's tuning forks, crafted from the very material they were meant to test. A master would strike a lithophone to produce a reference tone, then tap the raw stone block, listening closely for harmony or dissonance. A matching pitch meant the block was acoustically perfect, but a clashing sound revealed hidden weaknesses. Some researchers now believe these resonant stones were used for more than just testing. By placing a singing lithophone directly against a larger block, the sculptors could channel vibrational energy with startling precision, perhaps even using this focused sound to help fracture stone along pre-drawn lines. This was not brute force, it was a form of acoustic surgery. The sophistication did not end there. In the jungles of Central America, archaeologists have uncovered temples with resonant chambers built directly into their foundations. These were not merely rooms, but giant amplifiers. A single voice or drumbeat inside one of these spaces would be transformed, the sound waves reflecting and building upon themselves to create a powerful standing wave of vibration that filled the entire chamber. Imagine a sculptor at work in such a space, every strike of his hammer reinforced and focused by the architecture itself, the very air thick with resonant energy that made the stone more responsive to his touch. For the finest details, like etching hieroglyphs or the delicate feathers of a headdress, they may have used even more subtle instruments. A hollow reed pipe blown across the surface of the stone could produce a stream of controlled vibrations, a sonic stylus that allowed for intricate work without the risk of a chisel slip. These were not primitive methods. They represent a lost science of sound, a toolkit where architecture and simple instruments were used to harness physics in a way we are only beginning to comprehend. The Great Sphinx of Giza stands as a silent testament to a forgotten science. While its immense scale and weathered features are famous, its most profound secrets may lie not in its form, but in the sound it was designed to hold. Recent archaeological surveys have revealed a network of tunnels and chambers carved directly beneath the Sphinx. These are not mere passageways. They appear to function as massive acoustic amplifiers. When specific low frequencies, like the deep drone of a ritual chant, are produced within these spaces, the sound waves do not simply fade away. They are channeled and reflected, building into a powerful resonance that travels upward through the statue's very core. This sonic energy could have had a tangible physical effect, creating minute vibrations across the Sphinx's limestone body. Such vibrations might have helped to stabilize the stone or even ward off erosion by preventing dust and sand from settling into microscopic cracks. Local legends passed down for generations describe priests using harmonic chants to awaken the Sphinx during sunrise ceremonies. We used to dismiss this as pure mythology, a poetic way of describing a spiritual ritual. But what if it was also a literal, physical truth? The act of chanting may have been a way to energize the monument, to fill it with a resonant hum that reinforced its structure and enhanced its imposing presence. This suggests that sound was integral to the Sphinx's entire life cycle, from its precise carving, guided by resonant frequencies, to its ongoing role as a living, vibrating entity in the desert. The Sphinx is not just a statue, it is a colossal instrument, its silence a veil over a lost symphony of stone and sound. This omnidirectional illusion demanded more than just a skilled hand, it required a profound understanding of physics. Ancient sculptors were masters of light and perception, engineering statues to create a silent dialogue with anyone who viewed them. The key lies in two concepts, parallax and light reflection. Parallax is the apparent shift in an object's position when you view it from different angles. You experience this every day, watching nearby trees seem to move faster than distant mountains from a car window. Sculptors used this principle to their advantage, carving facial features with subtle, calculated asymmetries. The curve of a cheekbone or the set of an eye was not identical on both sides. This meant that as you walked around the statue, these features would appear to shift in relation to each other, creating a sense of movement in the stone. This effect was amplified by the way they manipulated light. The eyes of these statues were not smooth spheres. They were shallow, polished dishes, shaped to catch ambient light from almost any direction and reflect it back as a bright, lifelike highlight. This highlight seems to move with you, giving the stone a watching, conscious presence. But how could artisans achieve such flawless, repeatable precision on hard granite? The answer may involve sound creating the very surface that catches the light. By vibrating the stone with resonant frequencies, they could generate a network of microscopic fissures across its surface. These tiny, intentional flaws would not weaken the statue, but would act as a complex array of prisms and reflectors, each one catching light from a slightly different angle. The statue becomes a living canvas of light and shadow, its appearance constantly shifting with your movement and the ambient illumination. This principle mirrors the acoustic design of ancient Greek theaters, where the architecture was precisely shaped to carry a single voice to every seat. In a similar way, these statues were acoustically tuned, not to project sound, but to interact with the ambient soundscape around them. The faint echoes in a temple or the murmur of a crowd would have provided a constant, low-level vibration, keeping the stone in a state of subtle animation. The result is a piece of art that feels dynamic and alive, a testament to a forgotten era where art and science were not separate disciplines, but two sides of the same brilliant coin. The chisel itself may have been alive with sound. Think about a modern electric carving tool, which uses rapid, tiny vibrations to slice through hard materials with ease and precision. Ancient sculptors appear to have discovered a mechanical version of this principle long before the invention of electricity. They may have used weighted pendulums, swinging them rhythmically to transfer controlled oscillations through their tools. Another possibility is a rotating stone wheel, spun by a cord and powered by an apprentice, creating a steady, high-frequency hum. When a chisel is set to vibrate in this way, it does not simply pound the stone. It dances across the surface, its microscopic movements reducing friction and allowing it to guide itself through the material with far less physical force. This vibrational carving technique would have been revolutionary, transforming a brutal act of force into a delicate process of guidance. The evidence for this is etched into the artifacts themselves. In ancient Mesopotamia, stone vessels and reliefs have been found with impossibly smooth, flowing lines and intricate spiral patterns that seem to defy the capabilities of simple hand tools. These patterns bear a striking resemblance to marks left by oscillating instruments, not by a hammer striking a static chisel. This method explains how sculptors could achieve the seamless curves of a stone cheek or the gentle sweep of a brow, features essential for creating that captivating, lifelike gaze. By harnessing the power of vibration, they were not just carving stone, they were coaxing form from it, using a lost technology that perfectly merged the laws of physics with the soul of artistry. The massive stone heads of Easter Island have guarded their secrets for centuries. These Moai statues, standing sentinel on their stone platforms called ahu, possess a mystery that goes far deeper than their imposing stone faces. While their creation and transport have long baffled archaeologists, a new discovery suggests the islanders used the very ground beneath their feet to bring these giants to life. Recent acoustic surveys have revealed something astonishing. The ahu platforms themselves are not just foundations, they are giant resonators. When walked upon, they emit a deep, low-frequency hum, a vibration you feel more than you hear. This was no accident. During ceremonial gatherings, the rhythmic stomping of dozens of participants would have filled the air with this powerful, pervasive resonance. The sound would have traveled up through the feet of the statues, making the stone itself seem to vibrate and hum with energy. This creates a soundscape where the boundary between the living and the stone begins to blur. The statues would not just be seen, they would be felt, their presence amplified by a deep bass note that shook the very earth. This connects directly to the island's oral histories, which claim the Moai were walked into place across the island. The stories describe teams of people using a complex system of ropes, rocking the statues from side to side in a rhythmic, lumbering gait, all coordinated by powerful chants. We used to think this was merely a metaphorical description, but what if it was a precise technical manual? The the rhythmic pulling and the coordinated chanting would have generated a specific set of beneficial vibrations. These vibrations could have reduced the friction between the stone base of the statue and the ground, making the colossal figures easier to maneuver. The same sonic principles that helped carve statues elsewhere in the world may have been used here to make them walk. The idea that sound was the invisible engine behind the transportation and erection of the Moai transforms them from silent sentinels into participants in their own creation story. They are not just monuments placed upon the land, but instruments born from its song. The sculptor's final challenge was symmetry. How do you carve a face so that it appears perfectly balanced from every conceivable angle, using only simple tools and human judgment? The answer may have been written not in stone, but in the air itself. This is the fourth principle, sound as a guide for symmetry. Ancient artisans likely used the behavior of sound waves as a sophisticated measuring tool. Imagine a nearly finished statue, its rough form emerging from the granite. A master craftsman would strike a tuned plate, sending a clear, pure tone washing over the stone surface. He would then listen intently, not to the sound itself, but to the echo that returned. A perfectly symmetrical object would produce a clean, unified echo. But a subtle imbalance, a cheekbone carved just a fraction of an inch thicker than the other, would create a complex interference pattern in the returning sound waves. The echo would be slightly distorted, telling the sculptor exactly where to remove more material. This technique is a direct ancestor of the ultrasonic testing used by modern engineers to find hidden flaws inside metal beams and airplane wings. The ancients were performing a form of non-destructive testing millennia before the technology got its name. But how did they visualize these invisible sound patterns? They may have used the surface of water. Placing a shallow pan of water near the statue, the sculptor could watch the ripples as the sound waves passed over them. Any irregularity in the stone's form would disturb the perfect concentric circles, creating a visible map of asymmetry on the water's surface. This allowed for continuous, precise adjustments, ensuring the final statue was not just visually balanced but acoustically harmonious. Every subtle curve of the jaw, every plane of the forehead, was refined until the stone sang back a single, pure note. The omnidirectional gaze we experience today, that uncanny feeling of being watched from all sides, is the direct result of this sonic calibration. The statue is not just symmetrical to the eye, but to the ear, its form perfected by listening to the music of its own creation. The echo of your own footsteps inside an ancient temple is never just an echo. It is a conversation with the architecture, a whisper from a time when buildings were designed to sing. Across the globe, from the jungles of the Maya to the mountains of Greece, sacred structures were engineered as colossal acoustic chambers. The Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza offers a stunning example. A single clap at its base does not return as a simple repetition. It cascades back as the distinct chirp of the sacred Quetzal bird, a sonic miracle engineered into the stone steps. Imagine the sculptor at work within such a space, his every strike of the hammer amplified and transformed by the temple itself. The very air around him would have been thick with reverberation, a constant bath of resonant energy that guided his hands. This was not a random byproduct of design, it was the entire point. The temple and the statues within it were conceived as a single, unified instrument. The lingering echoes within these chambers meant that ambient noise, from chanting priests to the murmurs of a gathering crowd, would have continuously vibrated through the stone figures. This persistent environmental hum could have served to keep the microscopic fissures in the stone subtly active, maintaining the statue's complex light-capturing surface. The sculpture was not merely placed in the temple, It was a permanent participant in its acoustic environment, its stone skin forever responding to the whispers and songs that filled the sacred space. This reveals a breathtaking level of intention. The ancients were not just building structures to house their art, they were constructing giant resonators to animate it, ensuring their gods and kings remained eternally present, not only in form but in the very soundscape of the holy place. The wind itself was a master sculptor. It still sings through the narrow canyons of the American Southwest, carving spirals into the rock over millennia with nothing but airborne sand and its constant, whispering hum. Ancient artisans understood that nature was the original artist, and they learned to listen to its workshop. This brings us to the fifth principle, the influence of natural sounds. These sculptors did not work in isolated silence, shut away from the world. Their studios were open to the environment, and they paid close attention to the symphony of the earth. The resonant drone of wind across a canyon opening, the percussive rhythm of water cascading over stone, even the deep, infrasonic rumble of distant thunder, all produced distinct and powerful frequencies. These were not just background noise, they were a library of acoustic blueprints. By mimicking these natural sounds within their own workshops, perhaps using large flutes to recreate the wind's whistle or water channels to replicate a stream's gurgle, the sculptors could channel the essence of the natural world directly into their stone. You can see this profound connection in the statues themselves. In cultures that lived near powerful rivers or waterfalls, the stone figures often possess a remarkable fluidity. Their robes seem to cascade like water, their hair flows in stone waves, and their bodies have a soft, organic curve that feels more like a current frozen in rock than a rigid, geometric form. This was not merely an artistic choice to represent water. It was an attempt to capture its vibrational signature, to make the statue resonate with the same energy that shaped the landscape. The art was not placed in the environment as an outsider. It was grown from it, its very texture and form an echo of the world's own voice, a perfect harmony between human creation and the ancient, enduring song of the earth. Legends of sonic levitation echo across centuries, a persistent whisper that ancient builders commanded the very air to move mountains of stone. Tibetan stories describe monks using massive trumpets and deep drums to generate a resonant field, allowing boulders to float into place as if they were weightless. These accounts have long been shelved as pure folklore, but modern physics reveals a startling truth. High-intensity sound, focused with precision, can indeed create zones of alternating pressure in the air. These acoustic force fields can counteract gravity, suspending and even maneuvering small objects in a controlled levitation. While we cannot yet float stones the size of those at ancient sites, the principle is scientifically valid. For the master sculptors of antiquity, such a technique would have been the ultimate tool. Imagine the challenge of positioning a multi-ton stone block, already carved with the delicate features of a watching face. Using ropes and ramps risked chipping the fine details of an eyebrow or cracking the polished curve of an eye socket. But a method of sonic levitation would have allowed for gentle, contactless placement. The block could be floated and rotated with perfect control, lowered onto its pedestal without a single scratch. This would explain how these massive, intricately detailed statues were installed with such flawless precision. The idea forces us to reconsider everything we assume about ancient engineering. It suggests that the creation of the omnidirectional statue was not a single process, but a symphony of acoustic techniques, from the resonant carving of the stone to its final, floating placement, all guided by a lost science of sound. A low hum resonates deep in your chest before your ears even register the sound. This is the sixth principle, the emotional resonance carved into the stone itself. Ancient sculptors understood that sound is not merely a tool for shaping rock, it is a direct pathway to human emotion. They designed their statues to be more than visual marvels. They engineered them as silent instruments of feeling. The stone itself was imbued with sonic qualities meant to trigger specific psychological responses in the viewer. A low-frequency hum, for instance, is known to induce feelings of awe, mystery, and even a slight unease, a perfect emotional state for a statue of a powerful deity or an ancestor spirit. This is not a random effect. Modern studies have shown that sustained low frequencies can alter brainwave patterns, nudging the mind toward states of contemplation or heightened awareness. The sculptors likely discovered this through observation and intuition, learning that certain chants used during the carving process left an emotional echo within the finished work. Imagine standing before a statue in a dim temple. You are not just seeing a still figure, you are standing in the presence of an object tuned to a specific emotional frequency. The very air around it might feel different, charged with an invisible energy that makes the hair on your arms stand up. This is the result of emotional engineering, a lost art where the sculptor's goal was a full sensory engagement. The statue was not meant to be just seen, but to be felt in the deepest sense, to evoke a sense of tranquility, reverence, or profound wonder. This changes our understanding of these ancient artists. They were not just craftsmen, they were psychological architects, using the physics of sound to build a bridge directly from the stone to the human heart. Archaeoacoustics is the scientific field that listens to the past, mapping the sonic properties of ancient sites to understand how sound shaped human experience. This discipline gives us the tools to move beyond speculation and actually measure the acoustic environment a sculptor would have worked within. Take Stonehenge, for example. Researchers using sophisticated audio equipment discovered that the massive blue stones in the inner circle possess a remarkable acoustic quality. They act as natural amplifiers, reflecting and channeling sound in a way that would have made ritual chanting or drumming resonate powerfully across the entire circle. This was not a random effect. It suggests the space was engineered for ceremonial sound, a place where music and voice were integral to its purpose. For the artisans carving statues meant to stand in such spaces, this sonic design was a fundamental part of their brief. They were not creating art for a silent gallery, but for a living, vibrating chamber. Modern archaeoacousticians use laser scanners and audio software to create precise digital models of these ancient sites. They can then simulate how sound waves would have traveled, bounced, and blended within a temple or tomb. By recreating these lost soundscapes, we can virtually stand in the workshop and hear what the sculptor heard, the resonant hum of the architecture that guided every strike of his chisel. This is more than just technical data. It is a form of time travel for the senses. It allows us to appreciate that the creation of an omnidirectional statue was a holistic process, where the final location and its acoustic properties were considered from the very beginning. The statue and its temple were a single, unified instrument designed to work in concert. This fascinating blend of science and history does more than interpret the past. It actively brings silent stones back to life, allowing us to listen in on a conversation between artist and environment that has been quiet for millennia. The line between carving a statue and summoning a god was often invisible. In the seventh principle, sound becomes the very breath of life, a spiritual force believed to animate the inanimate. Hindu scriptures provide some of the most detailed accounts of this process, describing precise mantras chanted to invite a divine presence or prana into a newly carved murti, a sacred statue. This was not a vague blessing, but a meticulous ritual where specific sound vibrations were thought to physically reorganize the molecular structure of the stone. transforming it from a mere representation into a living vessel for a god. The sculptor in this context was not just an artist but a participant in a sacred act, his work synchronized with the rhythmic cadence of priests' voices and the resonant drone of ritual instruments. Every strike of his chisel was accompanied by sacred sound, each vibration intended to prepare the stone to receive a consciousness. This world, you saw no separation between the physical and the spiritual, between matter and energy. The vibration of a mantra and the solidity of granite were two expressions of the same universal substance. To them, using sound to carve a statue and then to fill it with life was a continuous, logical process. The resonant frequencies that made the stone pliable to their tools were the very same frequencies that would later make it receptive to a spirit. The act of creation was a form of invocation, where art, science, and faith converged to achieve the impossible, turning silent rock into a watching, listening deity. A master sculptor began not with a block of stone, but with a whisper of clay. Before any monumental project commenced, these artisans likely engaged in a process of sonic prototyping, creating small-scale models to test their acoustic designs. Think of a potter shaping a miniature version of a king's head, its features still soft and malleable. This clay model would then be placed inside a small resonant chamber, perhaps a ceramic pot or a stone box designed to amplify specific frequencies. The sculptor would then introduce sound using a steady chant or a tuned instrument and observe how the vibrations traveled across the miniature form. Did the sound flow smoothly around the curves of the cheeks? Did it pool or become distorted around the eye sockets? By watching how dust particles danced on the surface of the model or by feeling for areas of heightened vibration, the artist could map the acoustic flow. This was their blueprint, a dynamic plan written not on papyrus but in the behavior of sound waves. They were engineering the statue's future interaction with its environment, ensuring that once carved from granite, it would resonate perfectly within its intended temple. This meticulous pre-planning explains one of the great mysteries of ancient art, the remarkable consistency in the omnidirectional gaze across vast distances and different cultures. It was not a shared, vague artistic style, but a shared, precise acoustic technology. A statue in Egypt and a figure in Mesoamerica might share similar facial proportions not by coincidence, but because those specific proportions were found through rigorous testing to produce the most effective acoustic and visual response. This systematic approach reveals that sound was not an afterthought or a mystical ritual applied at the end. It was the foundation of the entire creative process, a fundamental design parameter as crucial as the stone's dimensions or the subject's likeness. The great stone faces that have watched over civilizations for millennia were born from these tiny, resonant models, their eternal gaze perfected first in clay and sound long before the first chisel ever touched the granite. That deep, unsettling rumble you feel in your chest before a storm is a language older than humanity itself. This is the world of infrasound, the eighth principle harnessed by the ancient masters. Infrasound consists of frequencies so low our ears cannot register them, but our bodies most certainly can. These powerful waves travel for miles, passing through solid walls as if they were not even there. They can induce feelings of profound awe, inexplicable dread, or a sense of the uncanny, a perfect emotional palette for a statue meant to embody a god. Ancient sculptors likely discovered that certain rituals, like the rhythmic beating of very large drums or the collective chanting of a deep, resonant mantra, generated these pervasive, sub-audible vibrations. They may have then designed their workshops to amplify and contain this energy, creating an infrasonic bath that saturated the stone during the carving process. The Hypogeum in Malta stands as a powerful testament to this knowledge. This underground labyrinth is a colossal infrasonic chamber where specific frequencies cause the very air to throb with a pressure you feel in your bones. Within such a space, a statue being carved would not just be shaped by tools, it would be impregnated with these low frequencies. The finished work would then carry this embedded energy, a silent, vibrating hum locked within its crystalline structure. When you stand before such a statue, you are not just seeing it. Your body is subconsciously detecting that residual infrasonic signature. It triggers a primal response, a deep-seated vibration that your brain interprets as a presence, an aliveness that you cannot quite explain. Your unease, your sense of wonder, even the chill down your spine are not imaginary. They are a physical reaction to a secret frequency woven into the stone centuries ago. This subtle mastery reveals an understanding of human perception that goes far beyond sight and sound, reaching into the very core of our biological being to make us feel, on a level deeper than thought, that the stone is watching back. The colossal stone heads of the Olmec in Mexico seem to pulse with a silent, low-frequency hum, a quality shared by serene Buddhist statues across Asia. This is no coincidence. From the bell tones used in Japanese metal casting to the harmonic perfection of Greek theaters, the marriage of sound and form was a global discovery. In Japan, the purity of a cast bronze bell was judged by the clarity of its ring, a principle that master artisans likely applied to their stonework. A flawed block of granite would betray itself with a dull, lifeless sound when struck, while a perfect one would sing, promising a statue capable of holding resonance. This universal language of vibration was adapted to local materials and spiritual beliefs. The Greeks, masters of architectural acoustics, designed their theaters to carry a single, unamplified voice to thousands. This profound understanding of how sound waves interact with stone curves and surfaces undoubtedly influenced their sculptors, who carved marble figures with forms that naturally captured and reflected not just light, but the very energy of the ambient soundscape. Each civilization, working in isolation, arrived at the same profound truth. Sound could shape stone, and a statue imbued with the right frequencies could transcend its material nature. The Olmec head, the Greek Kuros, and the Japanese Buddha, though separated by vast oceans and centuries, are all part of the same ancient symphony, different instruments playing variations on a theme of sonic creation. This global tapestry of innovation reveals a shared human intuition, a collective understanding that to make stone live, you first had to make it sing. The final gleam on a statue's eye was not achieved through laborious hand rubbing alone. After the form was carved, the surface had to be transformed from rough stone into a mirror-like polish, a crucial step for capturing light and creating that lifelike gaze. This is where the ninth principle comes into play: sonic polishing and finishing. Ancient artisans likely employed a brilliant technique known as vibrational polishing. Imagine a shallow stone basin holding a mixture of fine abrasive sand, water, and a small amount of olive oil or another lubricant, creating a gritty slurry. The unfinished statue, or perhaps just a carved head, would be partially submerged in this mixture. Then, instead of a worker spending weeks rubbing the surface smooth, the artisans would introduce sound. The deep, rhythmic beat of a large drum placed against the basin, or the sustained harmonics of a group chant directed at the slurry, would send powerful vibrations through the liquid. These sound waves would cause the abrasive particles in the mixture to oscillate at a microscopic level, making them dance and skitter across the stone surface with incredible speed and uniformity. This process would efficiently scour away microscopic high points, leaving behind an increasingly smooth and reflective finish. It was a form of massaging the stone into perfection with sound. The benefits were profound. This method would have saved an immense amount of time and human effort compared to manual polishing. More importantly, it resulted in a uniquely flawless surface. The sonic agitation ensured an even polish over every contour, no matter how complex or hard to reach. This uniform gloss is essential for the omnidirectional illusion. A perfectly polished surface acts like a collection of tiny, flawless mirrors, each one catching and reflecting light from its own specific angle. As you move around the statue, these countless microscopic reflectors create a seamless play of light and shadow across the face, making the stone seem to shift and respond to your presence. The glossy eyes of an Egyptian pharaoh or the radiant skin of a Greek goddess are not just signs of artistic skill. They are the direct result of a forgotten acoustic technology, a final resonant bath that prepared the stone for its eternal watch. Renaissance masters secretly studied these ancient acoustic texts, seeking to recapture the lost magic of living stone. When Michelangelo carved his David, he was not just shaping marble, he was trying to breathe a soul into it. While the formal records speak of proportion and anatomy, his personal notes hint at a deeper search for the spirit within the rock. He famously said he was simply freeing the figure already trapped inside the stone. This was more than a poetic turn of phrase. It suggests an intuitive understanding that the stone itself held a potential, a resonance that the artist's hand could awaken. The Renaissance was a rebirth in more ways than one, a rediscovery of classical knowledge that almost certainly included fragments of the old sonic sciences. Artists of this era were also architects and engineers, deeply curious about the physics of their world. They would have understood that a perfectly balanced statue, one that appears dynamic from every angle, requires more than visual symmetry. It needs a kind of harmonic integrity, a structural rhythm that echoes the natural world. This pursuit of dynamic form, of capturing a figure in a moment of tension and life, is the direct heir to the ancient quest for the omnidirectional gaze. The legacy was evolving, moving from invoking a divine presence to celebrating human potential, yet still using the same fundamental principles to make cold marble feel disconcertingly alive. Today, this ancient conversation between sound and stone continues in galleries and public spaces worldwide. Modern sculptors like Harry Bertoia created intricate metal forests of rods that sing with the slightest breeze, their chiming voices an integral part of the artwork. These are not silent objects to be viewed, but sonic entities to be experienced. Interactive installations now use motion sensors to generate cascades of sound as you walk past, directly engaging the viewer in the creation of the art, much like your movement animates the light in an ancient statue's eyes. The technology has changed, but the core intention remains strikingly familiar: to create a dialogue between the observer and the object, to break down the barrier between the static and the living. This is the timeless pursuit, the human desire to infuse our creations with a spark of animation. By looking back and understanding how ancient artists used resonant frequencies to guide their chisels and polish their masterpieces, we are not just uncovering lost history. We are accessing a vast, forgotten toolkit for artistic innovation. The past informs the present in the most practical way, offering inspiration that is both ancient and radically new. Our most futuristic ideas about interactive, responsive art may find their deepest roots in the workshops of masters who, thousands of years ago, first learned to make stone sing. The stone faces we admire today endured centuries of wind, rain, and decay. Their survival is a final mystery tied to the very sounds that shaped them. This leads us to the 10th principle: sound as a preservation tool. Certain resonant frequencies can create an invisible shield, a sonic barrier that protects the stone from its environment. High-pitched sounds, for instance, are known to disrupt insect nesting patterns. A specific, sustained note might have deterred wood-boring beetles from laying eggs in the wooden supports of a temple or kept spiders from weaving webs across a statue's face, maintaining its pristine appearance. But the protection went much deeper. The same low-frequency chants used to carve the statues could also slow the relentless process of erosion. Water is the great enemy of stone, seeping into microscopic pores and expanding with every freeze and thaw cycle. A powerful, resonant hum vibrating through the monument would generate constant movement within its crystalline structure. This subtle internal vibration prevents water from settling and pooling in these tiny spaces. It shakes the moisture loose, effectively keeping the stone drier and less susceptible to cracking over time. Ancient custodians likely understood this on a practical level. They may have performed periodic ceremonies where priests and attendants would circle a statue, their deep chanting washing over it in resonant waves. This was not merely a ritual of remembrance, it was a form of proactive maintenance, a sonic cleansing that fortified the stone against the elements. It reflects a breathtakingly holistic view of art and its environment. The statue was not a separate entity to be cleaned and repaired. It was part of a living system, an integrated component of a sacred soundscape that actively contributed to its own longevity. This ancient wisdom offers a profound insight for our modern preservation efforts. Today, we protect heritage sites with physical barriers, controlled climates, and chemical treatments. But the old way suggests a different path, one of integration rather than isolation. Could we design subtle acoustic systems for museums or historical sites that use specific, safe frequencies to help preserve delicate artifacts? The idea invites us to reconsider our entire relationship with cultural heritage, to see preservation not as a battle against nature, but as a harmonious dialogue with the environment, much like the one those ancient sculptors began so long ago. Skepticism is a vital tool in any investigation, especially one that sounds as extraordinary as singing statues. Critics rightly point out that many optical illusions can be explained by the clever manipulation of light and shadow alone. A master sculptor with a keen eye and steady hand could certainly create a compelling gaze without any knowledge of acoustics. Coincidence also plays a role, as random weathering or damage can sometimes create an unintended impression of life. Yet these explanations begin to fray when faced with the sheer consistency of the phenomenon across different cultures and the specific architectural evidence we find. The resonant chambers beneath the Sphinx or the acoustic amplification of the Mayan pyramids were not accidental. They were engineered with clear intent, and their effects are measurable with modern equipment. We must be careful not to dismiss ancient ingenuity simply because it challenges our modern assumptions about technology. The key is to follow the data without letting fantasy take over. Not every ancient statue was animated by sound, just as not every modern building is constructed with seismic safety in mind. But when we see a pattern emerge, when multiple statues from a specific culture or temple exhibit the same flawless symmetry and light-responsive eyes, and when that temple itself is a giant amplifier, the evidence becomes difficult to ignore. This balanced approach does not diminish the mystery, it deepens it. It transforms a wild idea into a plausible, evidence-based theory that invites further exploration. The real fantasy might be our own reluctance to believe that the past held sciences we are only now beginning to rediscover. These digital soundscapes are rebuilding the workshops of the ancients. With the power of 3D acoustic modeling, researchers can now take a laser scan of a temple chamber or a statue and recreate its sonic properties with astonishing accuracy. Inside a computer simulation, they can generate specific frequencies and watch how the sound waves flow around the statue's ears, pool in the curve of its smile or reflect from the polished surface of its eyes. This is not guesswork, it is a precise science that lets us test long-held theories. We can now ask the digital model, what frequency makes this specific type of granite vibrate most strongly? How would the deep drone of a chant bounce between these four walls? The answers are revealing that certain statues were not just placed in resonant spaces, they were acoustically tuned to them, designed to be the central component in a larger sonic instrument. This emerging field is on the verge of even greater breakthroughs. As scanning technology improves, we might discover subtle marks on statues that we currently overlook, evidence of where resonant tools were placed against the stone. Excavations could unearth instruments we do not yet recognize, strange devices that were not for music, but for marble. Perhaps a collection of oddly shaped stone rods, or a ceramic vessel with a specific internal geometry, will be identified as a sculptor's sonic toolkit. The very ruins we have walked through for centuries may reveal new secrets, hidden resonant chambers or walls angled not for structural support but for focusing sound. Each of these potential discoveries promises to shatter our quiet understanding of the past, revealing a world that was not silent but brilliantly, intentionally alive with sound. The search for the soul in the stone is only just beginning, and its next chapter will be written not with chisels but with algorithms and echoing data.